Hi everyone, Pastor Robert Sane here. This is my home church, Trinity Lutheran Church, Vale, North Carolina, and thankful to Pastor Tommy Lineberger for allowing me to be here to do a little filming today. This is where my roots are. This is where I was shaped and formed as a child, and this is where about 20 years ago I moved back to this community, and less than a year ago I rejoined this congregation following my retirement. This cemetery is where a lot of my ancestors are buried. Both my mom and dad, their remains are interred in the columbarium out at the opposite end of the cemetery. But this place has a lot of meaning for me, and it's a little bit reminiscent of the story of Jacob found in the Old Testament and his journey away from home, seeking to escape some problems that he created for himself, and eventually how he returned home. I think there's a little bit of Jacob, perhaps, in all of us, but I'm glad you're watching. Here we are inside the chancel of the sanctuary at Trinity Lutheran Church, and I'm standing here in front of the baptismal font. Yes, it was here at this font that I was baptized along with my sisters, and just not too long before that, my dad. The story of Jacob is bookended by two events that happened. The one that's in our story today is when he comes to the Jabbok River and is ready to return home because he's missed his father and his brothers. Yet at the same time, he's worried and concerned because he had deceived his father into receiving a blessing, and he tricked his brother out of his birthright. When he left home, he was very concerned that his brother was going to kill him. That's why he left home and went at his mother's direction to his uncle Laban's. And Jacob was very successful. He married, had lots of children. He accumulated wealth and herds of animals, but the most important thing to him was coming back home. And it was on his way back home that he camped at the Jabbok River. He had gotten word that his brother was coming out to meet him, and he divided part of his family to the left and to the right, thinking that if his brother attacked one group of family members, the other could flee to safety. But Jacob, there by the Jabbok River, ended up wrestling all night with a man that he really never knew who he was. He's only really identified to us by what he does for Jacob. Jacob actually prevails. He struggled against this man, but he prevailed. It didn't mean that he necessarily won, but he prevailed. But when morning came, Jacob demanded that he would let go of this man if he would give him a blessing. And so that blessing that had been promised to Abraham and Isaac, that blessing that had been confirmed to Jacob when he had left home and when he had slept under the stars on his way to his uncle Laban's that night, when he saw at Bethel a stairway going to heaven with the angels of God descending upon it, and which it seemed to say to Jacob then, I am going to work through you and bring about what I promised to your ancestors. And so now, returning home, this seems to be confirmed for Jacob. And that experience of wrestling and struggling with what's going on in life, it reminds me a whole lot of baptism. And of course, it did take place by the river. Earlier, you saw the cemetery here at Trinity Lutheran Church, and those are two kind of bookend events, I think, in the life of a Christian, much like Jacob had the stairway ascending to heaven that the angels were on, and the struggle with the man by the Jabbok River. Our faith connection begins with God when we're claimed in baptism. Before we're ever capable of acknowledging our love for God, God claims us. And then we experience the fullness and the richness of that promise at the point in time when we die. So that may be a little bit of a somber note to end things on, but I hope you can look at it as a hopeful note. What have you been wrestling with lately? What have you been struggling against? What have you been worried about or concerned about? Whatever it is, remember the story of Jacob and remember that God is always faithful to his promises.